So what are 9 things that you guys should know before you go to basic training? So we're going to do something a little bit different today. If you guys didn't know, basically my entire channel is based on how to physically, mentally prepare for basic training. Some of the things that you guys should know before basic training, what basic training is like, what AIT is like, what my experiences in the military is like. But for the most part, it's basically preparing for basic training and what that's like. Now, I just came across this article titled 9 Things That You Need to Know Before Basic Training. And I was looking at this and I was like, it's got these 3 basic training experts. And there are 3 things on what you should know before basic training. So 3 times 3 is 9. That's how we get these 9 things. So I'm going to go through the list and see how it lines up with the things that I've been talking about on my channel. So my entire channel is based on basically this article topic right here, so you guys will be able to see is what I'm saying lining up with this, and then if they've got things in here that I haven't talked about before, maybe I could tell you guys real quickly my opinion on it. So the first point here is by Nick Van Wormer, the author of the Ultimate Air Force Basic Training Guidebook. And so this article is about all the different basic trainings, just so you guys know. But, you know, obviously my channel is based on the Army. But the number one thing he says is the minimum is not going to cut it. So you need to know when you go to basic training that the minimum isn't going to cut it. And what he talks about here in this paragraph is when a lot of people are getting ready for basic training, they look online at the PT scores, and so they look at the chart and they're like, okay, all I need to do is these, 33 push-ups, and then I'm good to go. I am ready for basic training because I can do the minimum on the PT test. And what he's saying here is that's not okay. Like, you need to know that the minimum is not going to cut it. If you are doing the bare minimum, you're going to have a rough time in the military. If you're doing the bare minimum at basic training, you're going to have a really rough time at basic training here. So what he's talking about is just know that the minimum is not going to cut it, and always shoot for the maximum. Shoot to do your best. So before you go to basic training, don't be like, all right, I'm just going to try and do the minimum. Oh, I'm just going to try to get like 200 points in this PT score because, to pass basic training, you only have to get 150. After that, you got to get 180 points. Shoot for that 300. Get as close as you can, if not past that 300, getting ready for basic training. His number 2 tip here is pay your bills. And basically, a lot of people actually ask me, how your bills are going to get paid while you're at basic training. Well, number 1, the military is going to give you enough money that will pay for your bills. If you've got a mortgage, if you got an apartment, lease that you got to pay for, the government will give you money for that, based on where you live. It'll depend on how much money that is, so I can't say exactly how much it is because it depends on where you live, but it should be enough to cover your rent, to cover your mortgage. So things like that are going to be paid for. But what he talks about here is make sure you have all of your things set up for auto payment that you can. Your cell phone bill, just everything that you can, set it up on auto payment before you go to basic training, because when you're at basic training, you are not going to have internet access all the time. The only time that you're going to have internet access is whenever you get your phone, that 3 or 4 times whenever you're at basic training. So, if you have a deadline coming up right whenever you leave for basic training and then you don't pay it, well, you might not get your phone for a while. You might not have the time to actually go and pay that. Maybe if you do get your phone, you've got terrible internet connection. You can't even connect to stuff because the internet is so bad. So you just want to be really careful, make sure everything is on auto payment, and you will be good to go. Also, something that you can't have on auto payment, just make sure you have a family member or something that is going to take care of it. Just make sure you have some way to take care of all your bills when you're at basic training. His next and final tip here is study ahead of time. And I tell you guys this, and I got several videos on my channel for you guys to actually look at what are some of the things that you guys need to learn. And he says here is, upon arrival at basic training, you're going to be required to learn a massive amount of information within a short period of time. Within a couple of weeks of basic training, you're going to be grilled on this information, and if you make a mistake, it's going to equal additional attraction by your drill sergeant. So I talked about that in my last video, or one of my previous videos. How to not get noticed by the drill sergeants, and messing up and not knowing things is one of the ways that you will get noticed. So it says here clearly, if you are not on top of your game, if you don't know your soldier's creed or some of the basic things that they're going to talk about, it's going to make you more noticed. Your drill sergeant's going to be like, what are you doing? So just make sure you study ahead of time. I got several videos on that on my channel. So the next expert on these 3 tips are going to be T Major. He is a military fitness instructor and creator of the BW44 body weight fitness program, and his first tip is channel your anxiety and fear. So what he's talking about here is going to basic training is going to be stressful. stressful. It's going to be stressful. You're going to be excited, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be stressed out, you're going to be anxious. There's going to be a lot of emotions and feelings that you're going through when you're getting ready to go to basic training, when you're on your way to basic training, the first couple of weeks of basic training. And he's saying just channel all that anxiety to get the task done at hand. He also says here that you really need to channel that because, basic training is a big mental thing. So if your mental stability is breaking down, then it's going to make basic training seem a lot worse, which I've told you guys that, a lot of it is mental. And if you are in that bad mental mindset of like, oh my gosh, all of this sucks, then basic training is just going to be worse for you because you're in a bad mental mindset. So all that anxiety, all that nervousness, all that stuff, just channel it to get what's in front of you done and then move on to the next thing and then move on to the next thing and then move on to the next thing. And before you know it, it's graduation day and you're done with basic training, never to return again. His number 2 tip here is prepare your body for something different. And what he talks about in this short little paragraph is make sure you're doing your push-ups, your sit-ups, and your run time. But the difference here is make sure you're timing yourself, which I think is hilarious because I talk about that all the time. Make sure you're timing yourself. You want to be timing yourself because at basic training, you're going to be timed. Because, he talks about here, if you're doing a certain exercise and you're just doing it, so if you're just doing push-ups, and you don't ever time yourself, you really don't know how many you can do in 2 minutes. So to prepare for basic training, to prepare for the PT test, you need to know exactly how many push-ups you're going to be able to do. You want to prepare yourself and get ready for that whole basic training experience. Get ready for all the different activities that you're going to be doing at basic training. So make sure you're doing some planks, making sure you're doing some 30, 60, 61, 120s, as well as long run. Just prepare your body for the different kind of physical fitness that's going to take place at basic training rather than just, going and hitting, some chest and tries at the gym. His 3rd tip here is define your personal mission. And what he talks about here is when you're going through basic training, just keep in mind what your mission is. What's your goal? What is your, in his words, life mission? And I talk about this with you guys. What are some of the things that you want to accomplish in your life? It is literally hilarious how much these experts are literally like incorporating the exact same things I say. Now this article was made, before I started my YouTube channel, but it's just literally hilarious. I talked to you guys about your life goals and what do you want your life goals to be, and then how can you use the military to accomplish those goals. And he talks about keeping that in mind when you're at basic training. And when sometimes things suck, just keep in mind what the ultimate goal is. What is your mission in this whole grand scheme of things? And no, it may not be whatever sucky thing it is that you're doing right now. Just keep in mind your goals, and then that'll just help you just keep on, and like I said, getting on to the next thing. Get on to the next thing, because your goal could be just to finish basic training. So just every single thing that you do is just one step closer. It's just one step closer to accomplishing that goal. So the next 3 tips are going to be by Staff Sergeant Brito, a National Guard recruiter at guardcalifornia.com, apparently. And his first tip is getting your body in the correct sleep cycle. And he talks about how, let's say you are on the West Coast and you're going to go to basic training on the East Coast where, Fort Jackson or Fort Benning is. There's going to be a different time zone there, right? So there's going to be a big time difference. And then at basic training, you're going to be getting up earlier, probably much earlier than you actually are doing right now. And so he talks about getting your sleep cycle just on track with your basic training post where you're going to be going. And I guess that's okay. Like if you want to do that, I think that's fine. My biggest thing here whenever it comes to sleep is the night or 2 before basic training. You can do that. You can implement his thing. But for a long period before basic training, I don't think that's a big deal, because the first night at reception, you're probably not going to get much sleep, if any sleep at all. So just going an entire day without getting sleep, whenever you have the chance to sleep, you're going to sleep, and then that's going to basically, start to get that sleep cycle already on track, because you got that whole week at reception. You're just going to be tired pretty much the whole time, and going through reception just gets your body in that sleep cycle already before actual basic training starts. So I guess if you want to do that, that's okay, but in my opinion, it's not that big of a deal. My biggest thing is just the night before that you ship off to reception, not basic training, the night before you ship off to reception, you get a good night's rest, because you're probably not going to get much sleep that night. This guy's number 2 tip is learn the military fundamentals. And if you guys saw my video on the things that you should know before basic training, this pretty much lines up with it exactly, which also kind of lines up with future soldier training as well, I guess. But it talks about the phonetic alphabet, so know your Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, all that stuff. You want to go through military time and understand military time. If you don't know military time, you know what 0100 is or what 1600 is. It's extremely simple, so just learn that. It's just extremely simple. The warrior ethos and the soldier's creed, he says to learn that ahead of time. And then to identify military ranks. Now, I've talked about all of these things to try and learn this before basic training. The big thing here, in my opinion, also is identifying military ranks. Some of you might not think about this whenever you're going to basic training, but just make sure you know all of the military ranks in that branch. You don't really have to go into all the other branches so much, especially at the beginning. Just know your branch. So if you're going Army, make sure you know all the enlisted officer ranks, because it's a really big deal at basic training to call people by the proper rank. So call staff sergeants, sergeant, and then know, if you have a master sergeant, to call master sergeant. You can call them sergeant or master sergeant depending on who it is. You don't technically have to call a master sergeant, but most people, especially at basic training, they will want you to call them master sergeant, so I recommend you do that. You got first sergeant. Know the difference between sergeant major and command sergeant major, especially if you end up coming in contact with one of them. You want to be like, okay, is this a sergeant major or is this a command sergeant major? And you want to call them by their correct rank. Officers, captains, majors, all this stuff. Make sure you know these ranks, because if you screw it up, it's going to be a bad day. And his final tip here is brief your family on the lack of communication that you're going to have. And I talk about this on my channel, and I talk about how the family members are going to be communicating with you, or you are going to be communicating with your family member while they're at basic training, because there is going to be a lack of communication. And I've talked about, when and how you will talk to your family members at basic training. I actually made a video on that, so that's really interesting that they have this on there. But long story short, either the first day of reception and or the first day of basic training, your soldiers should call you. So if your soldier doesn't call you the day that they get to reception, they're probably going to call you the day that they get to basic training, and there's going to be a 2-minute phone call. And at that time, they're going to give you probably the address that you're going to be able to mail them letters, and then you can just start mailing them letters immediately. And then you're probably going to get maybe 3 more phone calls for the rest of basic training, and that's basically how you're going to communicate with them. Those 3 phone calls and then letters throughout the entirety of basic training. So those are 9 things that you should know before basic training. I thought it was pretty amusing how much this article of these 3 experts talking about 3 different things, of how much that lines up with my channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button. That would be awesome. If you want to stick around for some more of my videos, hit that subscribe button. That would be even better. As always, Instagram and Snapchat links right here. Twitter link is actually in the description, so you guys can follow me on there. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys later.